I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the July 20th, 2026 New Garden Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board held a executive session prior to tonight's meeting. Next, we'll move into the public comment section of the agenda. First, we'll have public comment on any non-agenda items. If you do have any public comment, please just fill out a yellow slip at the back there. I do have one name, Brad. Is that for an agenda item or non-agenda item? Agenda, okay. Doesn't look like there's any comments on non-agenda items, so if you want to come up. Can you come up to the,
So when you
announce your name and your address, please?
Name is Brad Pedro. I'm at 155.
you have to turn on the microphone if you're the first, just push.
Green light was on. Is it not working?
Okay, there you go.
Okay. The name is Brad Pedro. I'm at 155 Landenberg Road. I'm sorry, 155 Cooper's Hawk Lane in Landenberg. And the comment, I don't have a comment. I guess I had questions. I wanted to understand the variance being asked for the lighting in the Landenberg store. And depending on what I hear, I may not have comments, but if there hears something that I think kind of interrupts with my idea of the historical structure and what I'd like to see happen there, then I may have a comment.
Do you understand that this is not the hearing for that? That's tomorrow night.
Nope, I had
Okay.
no idea.
This is the Board of Supervisors, and last month they decided to not take any position except if relief were granted to limit the time that the light could be lighted to from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. But tomorrow night here, the New Garden Township Zoning Hearing Board will actually hear their case. They will make their appeal to the Zoning Hearing Board to seek that relief.
Got it.
And that's where all of the information that you're seeking should come out in that hearing.
Okay.
The application is actually on file at the township. Obviously, the township is closed right now, so you could read it. But that's where all of that information will be present. So this board has already said we're not going to take a position, but tomorrow night is the night that you
One.
can hear everything.
Okay. Sorry to waste your time. Thanks.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The application was in last month's packet, correct, too? So,
Oh.
so yeah, if you want to
Okay.
go online to last month's agenda packet, it'll be in there.
At this point, I'm going to recess the Board of Supervisors meeting as we have a public hearing. The public hearing is on ordinance 2026-002 on the New Garden Township zoning ordinance of 2026 and map. So I'll turn it over to Winnie for the public hearing.
Thank you. The purpose of this hearing is to present the elements of the zoning ordinance and the map to the public and to receive public comment. The board doesn't make a decision during this hearing. That's actually on the agenda for the meeting immediately hereafter. I'm going to put some exhibits into this record. Board exhibit number 1 is the proof of publication in the daily local news of the advertisement of this zoning ordinance adoption. Board exhibit number 2 is the certification that it was submitted to the Chester County Law Library. Board exhibit number 3 are the minutes from the New Garden Township Planning Commission concerning the adoption of this ordinance. And board exhibit number 4 are the comments from the Chester County Planning Commission concerning the adoption of this ordinance. The elements of the ordinance are immense. It is an entirely new zoning ordinance and new map. Some changes are not going to be that significant. Some are. There have been multiple public meetings outlining all of the elements of the ordinance. There was a task force who helped work to create it. And so aside from the fact that it is a new zoning ordinance with a new map, I think because there has been so much public submission and comment about this ordinance that I'm not going to go into any greater detail unless someone here would like that. So we can now receive public comment on the new zoning ordinance. There being no response? Oh, yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Good evening, everybody. Claire Aiello, Harlow Point. I just have a question. Has there been any change since the April 29th document? That's the last one I received and reviewed.
Yeah, the April would have been the last
Yes.
change or the last for the recommendation. So this has essentially been frozen for the last 3 months.
Okay, and there's been no changes since then?
No changes to date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So as I said, go ahead.
Oh, I can go back?
No, I'm sorry. I was not going to present the ordinance. The manager may in fact have a presentation of the elements of the ordinance. It's pretty extensive. It's a lot of pages and a lot
So-
of maps.
What I prepared was very kind of a high level summary to date of kind of capturing everything to put it into the packet. It was going to be more if there needed to be further explanations or about addressing some of the kind of more original issues or concerns before we started this entire process going on 26 months ago. And since there hasn't really been a lot of comments, I can forego that presentation. It is in the packet for tonight if you do want to talk about anything, but otherwise, a lot of it is kind of repurposed presentation slides from prior meetings and stuff. I just felt it would be a good kind of summation to date. So if there are no questions, I can just have that for the record, or if you need me to quickly go through, it's about 5 or 6 slides.
Anyone wants
That's
to see
subject to the
slide?
board.
We want the slides? Or want the public to see the slides?
I mean, it wouldn't really hurt to go through it. I don't want to.
Sure.
Yeah. Make people-
Another reason
there-
to talk.
There's some new
There.
faces. Yeah.
I know everybody likes to hear me talk about this thing. And some of these slides, for those who have been involved from day one, should see somewhat familiar because they have been, like I said, repurposed from prior presentations. But let me go ahead and just pull this up. And all right. So good evening, members of the board, residents, staff, Chris Himes, Township Manager. Tonight is, like I said, kind of a high-level summary to date. It'd be tough to go into all 26 months of, we'll call them progress and work towards getting here. Not necessarily we were doing presentations every single month, but it's been a lot of material to date. And really, it was kind of starting with the why this in the first place. So back in December of 2023, the township made the decision as a policy to be able to pursue a rewriting of the zoning ordinance and changing of the map or update of the map as a function of essentially a lot of the ongoing issues about land use decisions in the township. Some of the actions the board felt were compelling enough to be able to kind of alleviate certain constraints in terms of growth and trying to find other aspects to improve in the community, as well as some of those alignments between what was trying to merge with those priorities with things that are already written within our comprehensive plan. So essentially kind of think of it like the last time we did a zoning ordinance update to this scale was roughly about 1998, I think it was. So it was just time for a 30-year modernization effort. And make no mistake, after we do this tonight, potentially based off of the final decision by the board, it's not like we should wait another 30 years to do the next one. Zoning is an iterative process. You should be addressing it on its terms in the moment and constantly making fine tunes and changes to it throughout its, I'll call it presence in your codes. So with that, this has been one of slide that was prepared by Michael Baker, who is not here tonight. We've exhausted our consulting services to them by doing extensions and meetings and stuff to date. So we're getting by with no further consulting expenses at this time. But basically is their managed support other than doing kind of the release of the drafts kind of really paused towards the fall of last year, but that's not where the decisions dropped off. That was just a part of all the process to date with all the public meetings. These were just some of the high-level summations of those. We continue that effort through the fall, going into the early part of the winter, basically getting the consensus decision for recommendation from the Planning Commission, which required a little bit of a back and forth with our zoning task force and some further public inputs, to finally kind of bounce it up to the Board of Supervisors level, where there's been some grooming of that, even within the course of the late winter, early spring timeframe, to ultimately get it to where the board felt compelled. I think the final meeting for final recommendation for review, the biggest item we were talking about was beekeeping practices. So 26 months and you're down to bees, you're in a good position to possibly pass a zoning ordinance. So that's what they did. It had not necessarily changed since April, but it takes about a 45-day review window for the Chester County Planning Commission, which is essentially all municipalities in Chester County. It's our de facto upper tier planning commission for all jurisdictions. So it has to pass their, or not pass, it has to go through their review. Advisory in nature, but we did this through a deliberate process involving the county from the start. So with that, they issued us a joint letter because we did seek grant funding for them to support this project. So the full cost of the consulting was cut in half. So they issued us 2 letters. Those are in your packet tonight as well. One was essentially seemingly like a good job. This complies with our Landscapes 3, which is the county's comprehensive plan. And of course, an almost nuanced errata sheet. I think it was like 10 or 11 comments that will take advisory nature moving forward. So all in all, the county perceived it as you guys met your responsibilities as a township to execute this process. And then ultimately, we're here tonight on July 20th for the board meeting for final hearing adoption. So to summarize, in addition to some of the times we met with individual residents, we were out doing some community meetings and stuff like that within certain HOAs. We had 28 kind of dedicated meetings that were all recorded as well throughout the 26-month-long process, almost a meeting a month. So I've really felt like, in addition to the project website that was dedicated with kind of a breadcrumb trail of all the progress to date, knowing that this was going to be an iterative community-led process, hopefully that is the consensus opinion for the process that we took to date, that it was truly community-led and people's issues were heard throughout, which is important. So outcomes, one thing, and not necessarily like what is going to be this kind of change in outcome of just how we're changing the map and the land uses, which are more of a modernization effort, but really addressing some of the concerns that this is going to quote unquote open up the township, and that's not necessarily the case. These were discussion items that we had almost a year plus ago in terms of making sure people understand that while you have a zoning map, that doesn't mean that every inch of the township is potentially developable. There's a lot of compromises and things that are already around us that are kind of naturally protecting us, that are also provided for within your zoning ordinance that protect natural resources, your environmental, your history, your character of the township. That's embedded into how we approve land developments, how we continue to conduct open space review board prioritization to be able to preserve properties. Let's just say and how we support ag securities. It's a blend, essentially, as to say. So the township isn't going to just all of a sudden drastically change overnight. We have a balanced slicing of the pie type approach when it comes to this process. And I just mentioned it from the open space wise, we're going to have a competing priority as we move forward. Which properties do we see as heightened priorities for the open space initiative? How much do we see as more targeted for potential land use type outcomes towards development for adding some more attainable types of housing products, as well as commercial businesses to improve upon kind of local economics as well, to support those for small business owners and keeping those alive and well. And so this will be probably what I consider to be the legacy of this, is moving forward, having these conversations with intent. The goal was to align the map, not necessarily to shift high density stuff into the kind of extremities, if you will, to drive it towards the heart of the township, place it on state-owned roadways. So if those projects are deemed viable, they'll have to not only improve the infrastructure in the area, which everybody can agree is a good outcome as well in terms of improving Route 41, Baltimore Pike, and those kind of main state arteries, but also it's keeping the noise away from the more call them historical and culturally kind of characteristic features of the township. Another one was just how does this align with our existing sewer map, considering the township, shocker, I don't know if it's surprising anybody, we no longer own the sewer system. That topic might have come up a few years ago. So with that, it's now obviously owned and operated by Aqua PA, and it's one we're always going to be up against the wall about what we can do as a township, because we had a boutique municipal system that was really not necessarily scalable. And now we have less of a say about how growth occurs in the township, because Aqua PA is just a different agency. They operate differently, and they have a say in how we grow. So that's another factor that suppresses this kind of like, robust build out potential as well. So these are all the informational pieces today based off of progress with the White Clay development. These have been discussed before as well. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them. But as you can say, it really kind of keeps the sewer grid kind of intact, where the sewer system aligns with those roadways. And all that kind of blends into how the map shook out in the end. It didn't necessarily look like this from the start, took some iterations to it. But ultimately, this is what the board passed back for the final recommended map in late April. And then since then, nothing has changed. So I do feel like the consensus was align comprehensive plan initiatives to what are some of the sought after goals, to make sure that those areas are being targeted for modernization and potentially some improvements in the zoning, as well as make sure we're continuing to shift any potential growth initiatives away from those more environmentally sensitive natural resource areas, historical areas. Even the ability for the township to preserve historical structures is improved upon with more scrutiny in this ordinance too. And that's one where we've had this kind of advisory nature of the historical commission as they slowly watch one building get torn down after another in the township. We no longer have to do that anymore. We can be more proactive. We can be more restrictive as well. And that's a good outcome, considering historical outcomes are also in the comp plan as a priority. So all in all, I felt like this was a good compromise, a good process, and the outcome ends up being kind of what the spirit of the original intent was to do it in the first place. So I'll leave it at that. I know that I think when we first started out, this room was out the door. So where we are right now, I think that's progress in and of itself. So, and it's not like the people originally tracking it don't know that this is part of the adoption tonight. I'm sure their silence is kind of like a, yeah, we understand that. So any questions from the board or from the residents?
Any public comment? Yes, sir. Your name, please?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Good evening. Vincent Mancino. I live at Harlow Point Court. I just want to reiterate the fact that Chris is a good speaker, okay, and everything he said is probably true. But just remember that, again, we're a small township. Limestone Road is a very busy road. There's a lot of trucks, a lot of people, trailers. So you have to keep that in mind that with the build out comes a lot more traffic, a lot more noise, and the inability of the normal people that have already been here to have a, a normal life. So just keep that in mind. I mean, what he said sounds really good, but in reality, once it starts, it may not stop. So just keep that in mind. I just want you to know that, right? Because I've only been here a couple of years, but I like it here. It's quiet, and I don't want to see it change that much. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anyone else? Going once? Twice? All right, Mr. Chairman, I think you can adjourn the hearing.
Motion to adjourn hearing.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Carried. So at this point, we'll reopen the board meeting, moving into the, back into the agenda. We have no recognitions or presentations. In the meeting materials are the minutes from last month's meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the June 15th, 2026 Board of Supervisors meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Moving into the treasurer's report, including in the meeting materials are the paid and unpaid invoices. Unpaid invoices are in the amount of $782,728.72, and paid invoices are in the amount of $163,070.86. Before we take a vote, Steve, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, in full disclosure, there is a bill there for my employer, which is RM Crossing. It is in the amount of $702.50. It was for work that was done at the airport. I will recuse from taking action on that particular bill.
And you're writing a memo to that effect.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the paid and unpaid invoices?
I'll make a motion to approve the invoices.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Next, we'll move into the public safety report. Guy still here? Oh, there you are.
We got a whole nother agenda here, buddy.
What's that?
First off, this is Mike Siska. I think I introduced him the last time. Been some personnel changes. He is now going to head up the career staff at the fire department for fire and EMS. So he's been with us for
Since 2007.
since 2007, so. Okay.
Yeah, think so.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay, here's our, we're looking April and June, April through June. If you can see their total income was 165, 649.28. Go ahead to the next one for expenses. Keep going. Keep going to the end. There we go. So you can see total expenses there and then total income. Like I said, we got last quarter, we were in the minus because we were waiting on some checks to come in. So we're at a positive. We backfilled some accounts for the building maintenance fund, apparatus replacement fund. So if you want to go ahead to the next. EMS, you can see their total income was 415 versus 406. There again, we got some municipality checks in and what have you. Go ahead to the expense. Whoop. And net income, you can see is up to 16. There again, we backfilled the salaries and ambulance apparatus replacement fund. New ambulance right now is running 450,000. So we're trying to keep that account built up for when the time comes. Okay, year to date, from January till June, this is fire report. We run 471 calls. Okay. Calls breakdown, New Garden, you can see it's 66.67%. The rest of the municipalities there, Avondale Borough's 9.8, London Grove's 9.8. London, Britain, frankly, you can see are all in the around 4%. So this here's the call log. This is what apparatus responded to each call. Good. It's for the month of April. This is for the month of May. There again, as you can see, the call volume, we're at 48.44% for New Garden. All the other municipalities are broke down there to the left. We got May. There again, that's apparatus responded to the calls. And then we hear June for fire, and we're at 59 events at 64.41% of New Garden, the rest of them. Looks like the next busiest one's Avondale Borough, 10.17, so, okay. And then there's June, what responded to the calls in June. Okay, EMS, year to date, we're at 920 calls. This is for April. This is just the month of April. We did 131 calls. 100 of them were in New Garden Township. That's 76%. That's all right, babe. This is the call types. If somebody wants to look at that, you're more than welcome, but it's anywhere from, yeah, cardiac arrest all the way down to auto accidents. Yeah. So, okay. This is April's. We are at 50%. That's by unit for April. So you can see our ambulance ones went out 115 times. Second ambulance airs went out. We had 3 second calls we handled, so good. Okay, this is May. 117 calls in New Garden out of 159. There again, we're averaging still about 74%. Type of calls in May. Good. And then here's per unit what responded to the calls. This is June. We had 161 calls, which 119 with New Garden. We're still averaging right there at 74%. Types of calls for June. Okay. And then units that responded. So, okay. Any questions from the board? We do have a couple reports that were requested the last time. Chris, I'll give you the copies of these. For the month of April, the question was asked, and like I say, we were working through some issues. We got things figured out pretty good now. For the month of April, we were covered by the following units: West Grove 3 times, Newcastle 6 times, Longwood 5 times. We covered the following units: West Grove 6 times, but recalled for 5 of them. Newcastle 9 times, recalled for 1, and Longwood 1 time. May numbers: West Grove, we were covered by West Grove 8 times, Newcastle 3, Longwood 6. We covered the following units: West Grove 7 times and got recalled 3 of them, Newcastle 9 times, Longwood 4 times, Oxford 1 time. Then June, we were covered by West Grove 11, Longwood 4, Newcastle 6. We covered the following units: West Grove 14 times, got recalled 5. Longwood 5 times, got recalled 3, and Newcastle 3 times. Also, we got it figured out with the new reporting system. Get out of that, Chris, I'm going to share this with you and give it to you. You have April through June and January through March. If you don't mind, look through them and give us your input, see what you think. And damn, the old reporting system that we had, we got it figured out.
Yeah, we had just basically talked about the need to get better reporting from the county system, from average response times, for both fire and EMS. And I think the other one was transports versus refusals. I think
Yeah, I
those were
think
kind of
we
the
got
other ones.
experts for refusals, Mike, if you wanna, is there a way we can track the, response times and stuff in the new system?
It would have to be run a report off of it to see response
Yeah.
times.
We'll fool around with that and run a
Yeah.
report, see what we come up with.
And that was just because it's a key part of your ISO rating. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts still with the merger. We just had a big meeting at London Grove. We're still moving forward. Our goal is to still go live January 1 with Southern Chester County Fire Rescue. The new station number will be Station 26. It's all been decided. Sounds like the municipal government meeting I attended, sounds like they're leaning more towards a integral municipal agreement for the first couple of years, which gives everybody a chance to pump the brakes and work towards a common goal. So anything you guys need from us as far as what we can do better for reporting, I introduced Chris to Mike. He can send you an email with his information on it. So that, like I say, if we can try to get it out of there, we'll be more than glad to share it with you.
Very good.
Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
Thanks,
you.
Guy. Joe?
Yeah, that's a podium guy.
Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Joe Versailles with Southern Chester County Regional Police Department. This is going to be our second quarter report. I'm going to try to breeze through it, so you guys don't have to listen to me for long. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me. As far as our Part 1 crimes were concerned, Part 1 crimes are considered your little more severe crimes. Fortunately, we are low. We have noticed an uptick in thefts. Keep this in mind too. That has a lot to do with just advancements in technology and people being able to be scammed a little easier, especially with AI. So we're going to probably keep seeing a little bit of an uptick in thefts, unfortunately, because unfortunately the bad guys are taking advantage of that technology. So just remember, if you get a phone call, email, anything, something doesn't seem right, probably not. So just to kind of prevent yourself from becoming victims. But other than that, our more serious crimes, we are down a little bit more on, so that's a good thing. Part 2 crimes are considered a little less severe crimes. We are, what we're going to say here, we have been seeing a little bit of an increase in drugs, mainly methamphetamine and some marijuana. We are down off fentanyl and heroin, fortunately. No drug's a good drug, but that was the one that was claiming more victims. So as far as our numbers are concerned, we are down 79 from 96 last year and 93 the year before. So we are noticing a little bit of a trend downward in our crimes. As far as calls for service go, we're tracking about where we were, past couple years there, 1,631 as compared to 1,700 by this quarter last year. Obviously, a lot of our assist fire is one of our biggest and traffic-related issues. As far as accidents are concerned, unfortunately, I don't see this number ever going down. Just more people in the township, more people coming through. Our non-reportables are less severe, and we have been noticing them go up just a little bit. And our reportable crashes, which are, non-reportables are going to be your fender benders. Reportable are a vehicle needed towed or somebody was injured and needed transported to the hospital. Unfortunately, we did have one fatal this year down in Landenberg. But as far as our numbers are concerned, we're still pretty much tracking about normal from this time last year and the year before. As far as citations are concerned, we're very fortunate to have our second traffic safety unit gentleman back. Police Officer David Madonna was involved in a traffic crash a couple months ago, and he was in pretty bad shape for a little bit, but he's back, full clean bill of health, and looking to get back into it. He's currently in a mix-up training course, which is motor carrier safety enforcement. So you will have 2 certified traffic safety gentlemen that are certified in trucks. So a lot of that, I know that's a large complaint with a lot of the traffic around here is a trucking group. So fortunately, we have another motor carrier enforcement officer once he graduates this class. DUIs, we have noticed them go up just a little bit. They are, that's going to be related to issues mainly, like I said, with the methamphetamine and marijuana. Being so close to Delaware, we just get people who just don't know the laws that well because it is a little more forgivable in Delaware. So we get a little issues with that, a couple issues with that too. So other than that, DUI with regard to alcohol has been going down. That's just to do with like Lyft and Uber and all that. So, but again, our citations are up because of are up from the last year because of the traffic safety unit getting back up to full speed. This is our traffic safety unit numbers. Again, you can see that a large number of the citations are handled by them. Again, Officer Madonna just being back didn't have any really relevant stats because he just got back. So, but as far as citations are concerned, PFC Sullivan has been keeping up on that. A lot of truck work. As you see, traffic details, he's been paying a lot of attention to. We've been having some issues with unsecure loads, hay, debris, things like that coming in from trucks. He's been working hard on Penn Green Road, Star Road, Route 41, New Garden Road. We were having some complaints with trucks there, and pretty much just length and weight enforcement, and the bridge in Avondale. Other than that, he's getting truck inspections done, a few speed details. But now that again, now that Dave's back, we'll be up and running there. Revenue report. This is just obviously monies that we take in from court fees, reporting fees, parking violations, extra duty assignments. And I think that's the last one. Other than that, we did hire a new young lady. Her name's Brianna Schrader. She comes from Chester City. She's an excellent addition, very community oriented. We had 4 of us, myself, Sergeant Blue, Sergeant Brown, and Sergeant Kushner, all just completed the FBI LEADA trilogy. It's a command and leadership training where you go through a Supervisors Leadership Institute, a Command Leadership Institute, then an Executive Leadership Institute. And once you've completed the 3rd, FBI Leader recognizes you with your trilogy awards, which are these things. So we had 4 of us go through that. And lastly, I believe, Paul Miller's law is going into effect starting right now. It's a 1-year warning period, and then it's citations. Paul Miller was a young man that was killed by a distracted tractor-trailer operator who was on his phone. So now, based on the Paul Miller law, there are no handheld devices in your cars anymore in Pennsylvania. So we're basically going the same route as Delaware. So get your Bluetooth hooked up, figure out ways to use it. Even if you're stopped at a stop sign or stopped in traffic at a red light, you still cannot be on your phone. So again, 1-year warning period, and then they're starting to cite. So just so everybody has a heads up, and a little inconvenient, but it's a good thing. So, and unless anybody has any questions for me, yes, sir.
Why is it?
That's
Hey, Don, I won't make you get up here, but for the question for the record is why is local use of radar still not permissible for local policing agencies and only state troopers?
Yeah, to be honest with you, that's just always been the rule. They've never changed it. I guess back, when they first came up with it, they figured maybe municipalities would abuse that sort of system. I think there has been talk here and there about us potentially getting it because that would definitely, especially with our roads, allow us to conduct speed on a lot of roads where people have concerns, but we don't necessarily have the ability to set up an NRAD, which is our laser system, and it's hard to use speed timing devices on some of the roads just based on line of sight, stop sign placement, speed limit sign placement. So if you don't see us running speed on some roads where you get complaints about a lot, that's the reason why. It's just not practical. But sir, if we did get radar, we could definitely help out a lot more in some of those spots. Anybody else? Awesome.
Thanks,
you so much.
Lieutenant.
Thanks, LT.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Chris, next we've got the monthly director meeting report. Is there anything you want to cover there?
And the purposes of time, nothing significant to report. Just some continued highlights of some terrible culvert readiness conditions. So we just, those are in the packet as well. So
Great, thank you. Moving on to new business. We have an appropriation for the Avondale Fire Company and the Southern Chester County EMS. The total amount is $350,612.64. Chris, any comment there?
this is just the third quarter's appropriation for the upcoming late summer and fall. We decided to move this kind of on the front end quarterly appropriation policy a few years ago. So this is just a continuation of that policy. And it's for all three agencies.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to pay the $350,612.64.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Next, we have a consideration to adopt the ordinance that Chris just took us through and Winnie discussed as well with the hearing.
Just need a motion to adopt it.
Okay. Is there any discussion, or you just want to go right to the motion?
The only discussion I had would, we need to acknowledge the Chester County Planning Commission's comments that we comply with. And I'd just like to read the recommendations. Based on our review of the proposed zoning ordinance update, it is consistent with Landscapes 3 and has fulfilled the VPP grant contract. The township may apply for reimbursement under Section 8.7 of the VPP grant manual following adoption. Upon adoption as required, Section 608 of the Municipal Planning Code, we request a copy of the decision made by the Board of Supervisors. And we are in compliance with all of the comments.
Yeah.
So just want to recognize that.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2026-002, which is the New Garden Township zoning ordinance of 2026 and map?
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Next item is resolution 2026-013, the data center curative amendment.
Right.
Do you want to start this or you want to? Okay.
Right. As everyone is aware, data centers are big news now. We're all very concerned about them. The Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code has a provision that allows a municipality to declare certain sections of its zoning ordinance invalid in order to get 180 days of time to fix them. And during that 180 days, there can be no applications for data centers, no application to the zoning hearing board for data centers. So it's really a period of limbo for that purpose. And during that time, the township will have an ability to put together data center regulations that are more appropriate as we move forward through this current period of assault by data centers. So that's what this resolution does. It states the provision of the municipality's planning code, which gives us this authority. And within 30 days, the board has to be more specific, but tonight begins 180 days and says that from this moment on, for 180 days, no data center can make an application here. So that's the purpose of this resolution. We are doing it immediately after having adopted a new zoning ordinance. But it is pretty amazing how quickly the data center issues have come forward, and all the work that was done on the wonderful zoning ordinance. At that time, there really were not the same concerns that we're having now about data centers.
Yeah.
So that's the report. That's the reason for this resolution.
And just to further clarify that, if you remember, the timing for when we were making the motion to recommend the ordinance was in April. And yet that was the exact same time that we got the joint Chester County, Montgomery County planning guidance specifically for data centers. So that's how long it took for us to get some sort of benchmark standard, if you will, to start working some of the regulatory kind of, we'll call it, understanding the conditions for how we can seek regulations. And at the same time frame, and Winnie is correct, this is a continuance of an ever understanding about something that's relatively new to Pennsylvania. And now you have 73 municipalities in Chester County, thousands in Pennsylvania, all rushing to kind of do the same thing at once, which is to throw in the correct type of wording that they believe is commensurate to either A, promoting your community, B, just addressing your community, B, to heavily restricting your community. So there's a lot of examples out there. By doing this, we're effectively putting in a 6-month moratorium to do what works for New Garden Township. So it is a little bit more work in terms of updates to our zoning ordinance. The timing did not work out well because we were waiting on higher level authorities to give us better guidance. We're also waiting on new state bills and House bills that are constantly being built on the fly. So there's a bit of like, we're rebuilding the ship while it's at sea right now. So this allows us to take a breath. And we're going to do this through another public process. I know people love talking about zoning and ordinances and land uses in discussion. Hopefully this is narrow enough. We talked pretty anecdotally about what possible types of real estate and what kind of exposure we have, which we are fairly insulated as a community, but it's not 100%. And so it's going to allow us to be able to look at things that protect residents, specifically around the usage of resources, specifically energy and water, as well as just the aesthetics of it, where we already going to be zoning for it within the conditional use within the enterprise district. So for those interested in continuing to discuss, there will be opportunities to join in those conversations. We'll make sure that they are publicly advertised and continue to have the fun of talking about data centers out loud in a workshop type style meeting. But Winnie is correct. As soon as this is potentially approved tonight, we'll begin planning to roll that forward with a staff-led effort. We're not going to be seeking services at this time. I think we have enough information to be able to put something together, and hopefully a lot more, I'll call it educated population about zoning and regulations and stuff, considering we just got done with the 26-month process. So any questions about that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris and Winnie. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2026-13?
I'll make a motion that we adopt 2026-13, and this is the curative amendment on data centers.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Next item is the St. Rocco fee waiver. Chris?
So this request was brought to my attention about the potential interest in waiving fees associated with the, and look me wrong, the rectory building project there behind St. Rocco's Church, as a function of a nonprofit entity doing a pretty, somewhat significant land improvement, and just kind of what that meant for potential waiving of fees related to the township's building fee schedule. So I felt it appropriate to at least put all the facts about what you are considering for tonight in terms of the total amount of fees, the portion of those fees that are what the township has to then use to then pay off our third-party building inspector provider. And it's more of a policy decision at this point, more so than a, we can or cannot waive fees from a practitioner standpoint. So I think you have all the details tonight to make a decision, but this is completely up to the Board of Supervisors to make. We are on track for our in-year actuals in terms of budgeted, so we're on that course. So this would be considered additive surplus if we were to require them to pay the fees, but it wouldn't be leaving us bankrupt if we were not. But it is a number around near 90,000, so it is something to consider. So just let me know what direction you want us to go with. And you also have these submitted, and thank you for getting that to us for the agenda tonight. A memo that was provided for you for reasoning for the request as well. From St. Rocco's, excuse me.
Any comment from the board? Any discussion?
The only comments that I would have is I would support the fee waiver. I know St. Rocco's does a lot for our community, And it's a nonprofit. I believe the township has done this in previous years for fees. And if I'm correct, solicitor, the board has the authority to waive fees. Thank you.
We did it for CACs, right?
We did,
Yeah.
yes.
So I agree with as a nonprofit that does a lot for the community, I would support waiving it.
Great. So is there a motion to approve the waiving of the St. Rocco fees?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiving of the fees.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Just to include, was that waiving all, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but waiving all the fees inclusive of the portion that we have to then
Correct.
provide to BIU? I just wanted to make sure.
As you have it outlined there, which would be the fee schedule I'll refer to, correct?
Yes.
So basically it would be 89 minus the 7,000, so 7,000 would potentially not be waived because we have to, that's a pass-through fee.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so,
pass-through money. We have to pay our inspectors to do that, and I don't think we should go backwards, but we shouldn't.
it still represent about a 90% discount, so I don't know if
Correct.
that's still to be as good.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for your work on that. And
Super. Next item is the release of Phase 2 escrow for Copperleaf Ridge. Is there a motion to approve the release of the financial security in the amount of $884,767.98?
I'll make a motion to approve the release. What?
This isn't necessarily a release, it's posting for Phase 2 financial security as assessed by the engineer. They had 2 phases for their project site. They already had that original balance that they've been making reduction on. This is now Phase 2. So it's more of approving what the posted financial security is, of which they will be applying into the future for what they'll be requesting deductions for. So this is just the review that the engineer's assessment is approvable. Did I have that right, Winnie? Okay. What's that? Yes, and then we have to accept that they'll be able to provide those.
Great, thank you, Chris. So is there a motion to approve as described by Chris?
I'll make a motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Next, we've got the fiscal year 2026 capital improvement plan update.
All right. Well, no need to introduce myself again, but it is summer time frame. So for most townships in Pennsylvania, that's usually when a lot of capital projects are going live. And we just so happen to not necessarily have the in-year capital, but we also have some rollover projects that are beginning to mature into becoming active projects now finally. So I just wanted to provide some updates about what that means for just timelines and project interest, as well as what will be coming for next month when we finally get our mid-year budget to actuals numbers for review, is the amendment process to the budget, most of it being with capital as well because of some of the project rollover. And just some updates on what those expenses look like, because we'd like to make sure that our end-year accounting is, from a budget perspective, likely really in line with what the final reconciliation is from an accounting perspective. So with that, this is what we approved at the December FY25 meeting for the FY26 approval. As you can see, the significant part of our capital budget is paving. So we do a lot of road reconditioning. This was based off of a multi-year strategy implemented by the board a few years ago, in addressing one of the most common needs that we need to do, which is improve the readiness and condition of our own township roads, considering they were falling into somewhat significant disrepair. Other ones included were some rollover projects for the sidewalk project in the village of Tuff-Kenneman, and one of the continuing pains that is the Mercer Mill Culvert project, which sits obviously on the top of Mercer Mill Road, which causes some significant floodplain type issues during significant weather events, very much like Saturday. So with that, hopefully public will be delighted to hear that the rest of Hillendale Road will be completed by the end of, can't remember if it's I think it's the very beginning of August, excuse me. That was part of a 2-year reasoning for phasing it in. The reason we did it in 2 years, if people remember, the Thompson project went live and we didn't want to have a completely brand new road get ripped up with water lines being run in the opposite direction and ruin a new road. So we did it in 2 phases. So it was a deliberate reason to do so. And we stopped at the Thompson paving joint to do that. All in all, that's roughly nearly a 1.7, nearly, if you think about it, over 2 years, $1 million project of itself, just Hillendale Road. So paving is expensive, and to do significant paving projects, especially if you let them go to a significant state of disrepair, you're not just doing paving, you're doing full depth repair and replacement of the roadway in of itself. So it's a much more, it's like you're putting in a brand new roadway rather than just doing paving. As you can see, that's the track record of pothole history there. That might just be from the first quarter, but Hillendale Road, obviously everybody knows that it's in a pretty poor shape. In addition to Hillendale, we're going to doing 2 phases very similar to Hillendale for New Garden Road between this year and I believe 1 other year. We're waiting for the school project to be finished before we put in the second extension of New Garden, and Old Limestone Road as well, because it's just one of our lowest condition roadways as well. If you remember, we started doing the biannual roadway assessment of pavement condition analysis across all 64 plus miles of township-owned roadways in the township, to kind of give us a heat map of where the worst areas are and hit those first. So I get a very common question is, when is my road going to get paved? I'm like, when all of these other ones that look like moon cratered areas get fixed first, because you have to accept a B- versus that's an F. So, and of course, these sponge up a significant amount of bandwidth because they're long roadways that a lot more traffic goes in, maybe your local like cul-de-sac or court. So the community need is in these kind of more, we'll call them public areas, if you will. And we just happen to have a lot of them that we got to get in front of. So I guess the good news is we budgeted for 1.6 million and it actual is 1.2 million. It's about near $340,000 savings on that project. We also plan to have a interest income surplus as well, because, well, not surplus, I would say projected forecast increase in earnings, because the forecast maturities rates we're getting with our percentages for investments is higher or staying high than it was supposed to be. So all in all, from a capital perspective, we should have a significant amount to kind of re-put back into our capital reserve and use it for another year. So overall, a good story. We did carve off some of the plan to use from potential savings to be able to do some restorative projects for coal stormwater. As much as it's great to see that nice clean road on the top, this is what it looks like underneath your township right now. So we're trying to do a systematic turnover, so we're doing a lot of scoping, a lot of camera work, and a lot of different pipes, and it's not fun what you find. So it's probably one of the main reasons we get flooding in certain areas and significant topping of roadways is because the impediment to actually have water flow where it's supposed to, just because you have conditions like this. This is more of a highlighted one, but we have a lot of them that look like that, unfortunately. So it's that snap tight type replacement. You just take a plastic kind of snap type sleeve and you kind of fill it out. It's almost like kind of putting a gigantic Band-Aid from the inside out rather than digging up the entire roadway and laying in new pipe. This is what it looks like when a culvert can potentially blow out to one side. So if you remember the Mercer Mill project, this is just one where it's more tied up in the bureaucratic process, because most people, if they're aware, this is a tributary that flows into the White Clay Creek, which is a federally protected wild and scenic river. So if you move a blade of grass, you have to get an Army Corps of Engineer and a National Park or Wildlife Service, National Park Service, review of it as well. Federal review process are very lengthy, as well as the fact that this is a joint DEP permit as well. So you just threw like 6 agencies at this thing and everyone has to get a cut. So of course that leads to increased engineering expense. So the cost of the project is just tacked on 40% more because you just have more review process because of it. But it is one where it's an undercapacitized pipe and it has caused several blowouts in the past. And the whole thing is to avoid an actual roadway collapse at the top of a hill down towards the historic Landenberg area. So that was why we're prioritized it. So more to follow, but this should be one where we can get, it's under review right now for the joint DEP permit review. And we're forecasting beginning year of 27 post kind of digging season constraints and the assessment, I think, for nesting bog turtles. So more to follow on that one. But any questions about this project? It's kind of been in the circulation for the last few years. I just want to let you know that's why it's taking so long. For the Main Street sidewalk improvement project, if you remember the south side of Main Street from Newark Road to where the post office is, this was applied for a grant in 2021. Right away, took a moment to be able to get approvals from all the property owners to allow the easement access to improve the sidewalk in front of their house. But all that's to say the project was awarded and bid out this past late spring, early summer timeframe. I believe construction is set to begin in August and should be finished by December of this year. So this one will be closed out. This is a grant-funded project. The township incurred the expense for the engineering, which is fairly common. It's good to know that the total engineering estimates is actually going to be less, so we should save net about $33,000 in engineering expenses. So that's a good story. The timeline to get the project kind of put forward is probably not the best story, but all that's to say the original grant award bid amount was nearly $1 million for roughly about 900 feet of sidewalk. It ended up being bid out to about $650,000. And this will be via kind of a pass-through function through the township. So we get an invoice, we submit that invoice for review to PennDOT. PennDOT says yes, they give us the money, we pay the vendor. That's kind of that circulation as well. So this is not at the cost of the township. And of course, final delivery in this year. So if you're Well, the concern is if you see construction in Tough Kenneman, it is not for the Baltimore Pike intersection, it is for the sidewalk project, just to make sure people are continuously confused about infrastructure projects. The other ones were just ones we approved at the past meetings, but we are continuing to improve our own ability as a public works department to respond autonomously to project work in the township. It's kind of a function of furthering our insourcing as well as replacement of some assets. So these were all updates from those, and they're on schedule to be delivered and or already being financed and actively paid for per the project projected actuals and expenses for the budget. For those continuously being interested in the Smedley Preserve project, this has been one where we've tried to pursue grants as the mechanism to enable some of the projects associated with the accepted master plan, which is really this kind of larger kind of overview of it. For those unfamiliar, it's making the golf course, reverting it back to its natural state pre-1960s, if you will. So a lot of prairie kind of meadowing as well as tree reforestation. Put in some public facilities for access improvements as well. But all that's to say that that comes at a kind of phased cost by cost by cost. We figure we could save some money by doing a kind of spent mill pad site for a parking lot off of Church Road that kind of marries up to the Sherwood Drive community there, because right now parking is only provided for like a curbside on McHugh. And what we're going to do is have our Public Works Department take spent mills, hot mills from Hillendale Road Phase 2 project and throw them here. So when you park at Smedley Preserve, you're parking again on Hillendale Road. So that'll be into effect here, hopefully by the end of August, we can say. And reason we had to kind of take this larger level, kind of more grandiose type plan to do a larger, robust project. Our DCD Greenways and Trails grant didn't come back to the extent that we had requested it for, so we're doing it more on a tighter budget. But still making sure that the product overall looks commensurate with what we want to do as a township for the site. As well as we have a Chester County Conservation District Lawn and Meadow grant that's going to give us about 10 acres worth of seeding. In addition to the fact that if you're not familiar with the stormwater restoration project there, they did a significant amount of reseeding for the materials that kind of go along the stream that they've worked to repair from basically last spring through the winter time frame of the early 26. So a lot of improvements have been made to the facility if you haven't been there yet, and hopefully you can park there soon in a better parking lot and get out and see the site. So any questions about this project? As you can see, what was forecast to what we're doing is significantly lowered, as well as the fact that's inclusive of all of these costs, and a lot of it is going to be offset by grant funding. And the local matches for everything is actually coming out of our open space fund, so it's not to the general fund taxpayer. So any questions? This is just one where we're trying to throw all bandwidth to the priorities. So some of the ancillary projects, we've all kind of been deprioritized, so we're not going to be moving forward with some of these recommendations other than the cybersecurity enhancements, obviously making sure that we're continuously focusing on that. And then the one thing that I think is an initiative around transparency and better community access towards materials in terms of land records is that digitization effort for the basement, which another part of that is we want to try to get a tenant in the basement, a local business, and we're working with at least one right now, so we can get some township lease rent revenues to help pay for other kind of facility type updates. So in order to fashion, we need to clean out the basement in order to get revenue. So we have to make an investment. For us, that is digitization of land records. So that's likely going to come up as a potential initiative at the end of this year. So any questions about this? And that's really it. On the township side, the CIP is fairly straightforward, and that's because we made kind of the concerted effort that paving was the #1 priority and will continue to be until likely we start getting caught up, if you will, and then whether or not we have additive revenues without kind of increasing costs, can we start supporting some more increased, maybe some stormwater projects, as well as what we want to do with infrastructure improvements around traffic and intersection improvements and things of that nature. So they are on the horizon. We just don't have a funding mechanism for those at this time.
So Chris, when do we get caught up?
Great question. I think the big roads are the ones that we attack first. There's the longest arteries of them. So it's one where you can do a formulaic 2 miles per year, or excuse me, I think is it 3 miles per year and a 20-year replacement schedule to do a 60+ mile replacement schedule, which is kind of like the pie in the sky, kind of like that's the best you could possibly do. Granted, the cost of paving is somewhat of a, if you're doing full depth and repairs, you're not getting as much done lengthwise because the width you're repairing versus, so it's like 1/3 of a mile can cost as much as 2 miles. So I would say it depends. And so lighter paving projects won't cost as much, so we can get more done, or we can make that choice that we're not going to do as much length that time and just keep within that too. So it's very tough to say that we get caught up. The goal is just to kind of keep it in a cyclical pattern. And that, I guess that's, we had a lot of deferred projects to really get that within probably the next 10 years. So it's going to take a while to kind of accordion back to a more restorative cyclical process. But that's more indicative of the historical underfunding or kind of lean funding more so than what we're trying to do. We want to get that community survey in another year that says the roadways look great. So, yep.
Go through the airport CIP now?
I wanted to treat that separately because it is a separate funding thing. So if there's no questions for the Township CIP, we can move on.
Yeah.
There's nothing to vote on for here tonight.
Good.
And real quick before going to the next one, I have our department director. John, are you on there? Can you hear?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody.
So we have our.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you. For the
Okay.
airport specific CIP update. So John is currently actively on the ground at Oshkosh, which is a significantly sized air show, general aviation specific up there in Wisconsin, representing New Garden Flying Field and our interests. And has made himself available for tonight for questions and answers if needed. But obviously clunky to be able to deliver the presentation. So I'll be walking through the airport CIP slides here. So hopefully any questions you have, we can answer. All right. So as most people hopefully know at this point, we treat our enterprise funds differently than our township capital funds. So we kind of separate how those monies are used towards reinvesting potentially in those specific enterprise functions, very similar to how you would manage a utility fund. So this one is the airport updates for its CIP projects, and it kind of carries some updates because we have a moment in time where there just happens to be a bit of a windfall moment to be able to do all the airport CIP projects, and how they're locally funded has some constraints, and that's what we're going to go over tonight with a potential policy recommendation as well for board consideration. which is why we wanted to treat this as a separate conversation. So if you're not familiar, similar slide in nature with the, you're gonna do this to me now? There we go. Airport projects different than township projects. As a former aviator myself, I've been able to at least get pretty familiar with kind of what these all mean. So if you have questions, please let me know, or for John as well. But this year we identified the PAPI and rails lights, kind of runway and instrumentation lighting system, as well as your precision kind of lighting system navigation down into the airfield, excuse me, non-precision lighting system for those types of approaches down to the airfield. As well as we were going to begin the design and engineering for the terminal apron, which is the area immediately, if you're at the flying field looking southbound, it's that ramp space towards the right side of the building or west of the main facility there. So that's also up for potential resurfacing due to its pavement condition, as well as we always try to circulate some hangar door replacements. It's kind of like roadway paving within a certain cyclical time frame. You just want to make sure that those things, because they're constantly being kind of manipulated, and they just, go into a state of disrepair over time. So the way that, for most people who don't understand, the township as a owner of the airfield, but operates the airfield as a feeder airport status, which means that we're pulling general aviation traffic away from major airports, means that we get a significant contribution through the use of federal FAA monies that come through the Bureau of Aviation of Pennsylvania as a function of PennDOT to do significant capital improvement projects, where our local match is usually about 10 to 5% versus like a 30% match or a 50% match. And so that gives us access to kind of do some pretty significant projects, like a roadway resurfacing or for a build out of your hangaring spaces. But in this instance, we have 3 projects that were planned, as well as a potential additive opportunity, which was for the hangar development project, which the cost of that project going up means that the plan that we had recommended back at the last meeting doesn't become as financially viable anymore. But that is a good project because of what it achieves in terms of scaling the use of the airfield, which is a part of the reason we have that as a department, their mission. It's just all these things are kind of happening at once. So with that, that is what a rail and a PAPI kind of system looks like. As you can see, our local share for this one is 0, so it's through 100% grant funded project. It's just more of where it's at to date right now, with final planning and decisions made by later this fall, continuing the project. So it's likely to be this year into next year type project. For the reconstruction, the terminal apron, design and engineering actually comes pretty close to construction as well. It's kind of seamless across the board. That actually happened to the ramp space improvement project on the eastern side. If you haven't seen kind of a overview, you'll see the eastern ramp looks kind of brand new surfacing. That was the last project. This is kind of the mirror of that on the western ramp sides, where all the tie down spaces are as well. And it's just because the pavement condition just it's at a lower state of repair. We try to split those into a design and engineering and then fund the construction costs, and it's just one where we're probably going to likely run into those kind of at the same time frame. But all is to say that our local share is only 5%, so you can get a near $2 million project done for maybe 100,000 total, split over multiple years. So it's a feasible project for us. The fuel farm, this is bigger than most people would believe, because it's not only comparing our existing tank system, which is an avgas system, so general aviation, your Cessnas, your smaller level traffic, adding a second tank with commercial gas, which is Jet A1 fuel. You can get bigger planes kind of landing at the airfield that are rated to land at our 3,700-foot runway there. So they're bigger consumers if it's a fixed wing aircraft to be able to do so. Another one is most rotary aircraft also have the ability to consume a Jet A1 fuel, including military aircraft as well, which they currently do bounces at the airfield anyway. So this would be now an opportunity that they can do bounces, stop, get gas at our airfield, which you have to become get a certain designation in terms of a federal contracted licensed provisioner for fuel. But if you get that, now you have heavy consumers of gas, and of course that's good for sales as well. So all that's to say that this is a project for potential completion later this year in the fall. And of course it is a 10% local share. And then what we had last year proposed was essentially a potential hangar build out project, 10 new hangars, if you will, that we're going to be replacing what we have right now, which is essentially a use of parking lot to park and rent lease space for like RVs and stuff like that. So not necessarily an aviation type of use, but we're just getting by with what we have there to be able to maximize revenues. So what this would do is we would take this build out in this area of the hangars and then repurpose one closer down towards the ramp space. And that was to be able to provide for a space for a local flight air methods helicopter ambulance service, medevac helicopter service, which helps us regionally for responses as well as increases our usage of commercial gas and adds another resource and also just another user of the airfield. So this was the one where the project expense went up, and the enabling function originally we had, which is a 50-50 match with the capital projects grant. We are waiting to hear back about a multimodal grant. Those tend to be kind of extended in terms of the timelines for when they get those approvals. That is a 30% match, so it's not going to necessarily provide full relief, but at least it's 20% less potentially. So that's still a possibility. We just have to wait for that. But with that, because of the increase in cost, we run into this, the financials don't necessarily work with the potential lease revenues and the gas revenues paying off of a potential 10-year PIB loan amount, because essentially your PIB loan amount is in excess of your revenue forecast, if that makes sense. And so you don't want to have a approvable plan based off of a net negative position. So what's a better plan or another plan to consider for alternatives? So with that, the goal tonight was to potentially discuss what we can talk about, which is a potentially different options. So we're looking at resources right now that the township has. And in the past, one use of a resource has been for facilities, necessarily township facilities, but even with the police facility use of, if you remember, we have that 22 million principal balance that we're using for investments in terms of generating interest income that's going towards capital right now in the first place. So as you can see, it's a slicing of that roughly off of the top to be able to allocate towards the airfield as sewer revenues, not taxpayer revenues, that would go towards serving as a backstop for managing the grant for the airport hangar development specific project that actually wouldn't necessarily hurt us from a usage of that potential same amount for invested interest earnings, if that makes sense. So it's the needed bandwidth to get the project work for the airport complete while you're taking it off of this usable balance, but that's a policy decision for the board to consider more so because it is using towards another facility. If you remember, we had this kind of pay down schedule when we originally got the monies are up around 29 million. This would be a reduction of that further towards the usage of building out the airport as well. So the precedent's been there in the past for usage of it. And so that's one where, because it's the least restricted amount that we have, and it's one where it's not being used for a reserve position, and it's not being used necessarily harmed for funding of other endeavors, in this case, interest towards capital projects in the general fund side, that would be a recommendation because it's the least harm in terms of usage of funding. So I wanted to kind of postulate that to the board tonight for consideration, and just let me know your feedback and how you want us to proceed.
So I know we've not been able to get money we invest in the airport back into the general fund, like it only goes the one way. So would this be considered a loan and we could get it back, or is it just giving $1 million to the airport?
However you construct it, you could use it in the same way as you use a PIB loan, but just with better returns, to be honest, and a longer payout schedule. You just wouldn't want to make it so you're like a tax increment financing. Mm-hmm. You're giving them like 10 years or 20 years, but it's still monies that go away from the airport's ability to remain in a solvent position year over year. So you'd have to be deliberate about how you do it. But yeah, you're right. You can use it as quote unquote a bank.
Mm-hmm. But with anticipated development up at the airport,
correct.
We could spread it out for a longer period and then.
And that's also to say that we do have a potential bandwidth of surplus being generated by cost savings from paving, as well as we're getting, I think, about $250,000 more in interest income this year than forecast. So you could use some of those, like you have a bunch of different ways. It's just for the decisioning for right now, this would be one where we could use this as a policy and then use that money to replenish the principal balance. There's a lot of different offsets. But at the end of the day, it was always known that general fund revenues not to be mixed as a policy for airport general fund purposes. This isn't that, this is capital facilities. It's a bit of a different discussion. And it's not through the use of township coffers from tax revenues. It's from this kind of windfall moment where the township used this money and sliced it out, paid $4 million to pay off the police bond for the building there on Route 41, did a couple different other kind of payouts, paid off its, I think it's the bonds from the former
Yeah.
sewer system. Just, there was a couple different items and usages there.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, the township does own the airport, so this isn't a
Correct.
township facility. How it's run is still the same, it's just for capital improvements.
Sure.
And we also still, we haven't realized those back to us, but if you remember, we still have the monies potentially coming in from the liquefaction of the leases from the cell towers as well. So you could use those. It's, like I said, a blank slate, but we're also trying to make sure that we have some sufficiency of funds available for park space build out specifically for New Garden Hills. So like I said, it's just competing priorities, and how you want to use those is more of a, what would be your preference?
I would like to have it done as a loan, and then I've just thought of the fact that if something does happen, we can always just forgive it, correct? And then it would just,
Yeah.
if like something happens with the airport revenues or whatever.
Okay.
We can just say, yeah, forget about paying it back, so.
Okay.
All of these, all of the projects will potentially increase the revenue that the airport is going to get anyway.
That's the,
That's
that is
the
the
idea
outcome.
behind it,
Yep.
yes.
Right.
And currently, we're still, the interest income is larger than the earned income tax annually.
For what? I'm sorry?
For the interest earnings, is that still the largest revenue generator in 2026?
So what we get in terms of Act 511 revenues, for those unaware, general
Earned income
fund is
tax.
supported primarily by Act 511, specifically earned income tax. That's all just for the general fund. That funds operations, public safety, township kind of admin, everything related towards public
Correct.
works, that stuff. That's the number one revenue generator that we have. Property taxes are behind that, and then fees for services are third. That's in the general fund. In the capital fund, interest income is the number one funder of capital.
Correct.
So it's separated out a little bit. We decided to shift that towards capital things because these are every single year one-time funds. So it was like one-time funds on one-time projects. And it made sense to do so. Could at some point when we quote unquote catch up and we don't need to use all of our interest income in one thing, can we build up that principal balance? There's a bunch of different ways to go. It was just the board's desire to start doing some significant repair work. But if you scale this one next to that one, this would be somewhat higher than what we get in total fees for services per year, but it'd be about 3 to 4 times less than we get through earned income tax and property tax from the general fund. So in terms of scale, that's what the kind of comparison is.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we own the asset. It belongs to New Garden Township.
And so I know there is some like intent to kind of separate the two, but like I said, my guidance from that one was always airport general fund purposes are funded by airport general fund services or general services, and that is not changing. That is the case. This is one where they have 4 projects, one of which is more expensive than the other 3, but it's to improve the conditions for them to actually incur more revenues in the future and achieve that airport master plan build out, which was an accepted document when the township purchased the airport. So I think of it like this is one of your departments. So it's how you want to fund a capital project for a department.
Correct. No different than your
Rather than like you're contributing to like the fire department or the police department,
Regional
which is
police.
now a separate governmental entity. Southern Chester County Regional Police is disassociated from the township, from a governmental organization standpoint, different tax IDs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea and I support,
Mhm.
you know, spending the money and doing any improvements we have to increase the revenue. It's just like I said, that the fact that the money can never come back unless we set it up
Yep.
in a certain way. That's my only thing.
Would you want to put guardrails that has to come back into the principal balance of the investment?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's
Yeah.
put on there as well.
And it,
Yeah.
and it can be for a longer time frame, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So that the payment is not large, so that
Okay.
it doesn't hurt future projects for the airport. And I think we've realized how many, $17 million in
With these
outside
projects,
monies.
it would be closing more sort towards near 20. so
Correct.
Over 15 plus years.
Yes. So we've averaged about $1.5 million annually in government grants.
Yep.
And we've managed to successfully pay the match, the fair share, which comes back on the municipality
Correct.
out of the airport operating funds.
Well, because
So
I think what we have forecast is roughly between, I think when you do like a shake, because we are always actively managing some sort of pass-through grant funding for airport projects per year. So if you look at kind of what a healthy kind of benchmark balance would be for a year-end position, non-obligated anything, we're in what, like the 700s, Christina, for the airport reserve? Or is it more or less than that one? Just this number that came to me off the top of my head. And that's why we want to keep, it's not necessarily, we don't want to spend that down to zero on all the projects. We want to keep a certain balance level. They call it for anything to kind of keep of is your 35% or your 40%. Just basically want to have enough cash on hand for anything. And that's what we want to keep. So we don't want to bleed that
But-
all the way down. So that's perfect for the 5 and 10% match funds. And we continuously take as a function of general fund airport expenses, we put money back into that account. So an expense for the airport is always replenishing its own coffer.
Yes.
So that's another one where we could potentially shift that towards a payout schedule within the general fund side of the airport. And so instead of paying back into the coffer, because to be honest, after this, some of the projects kind of go down, that could be something to do as well. So we don't have to like take new revenues off the board. We could use existing ones.
Right.
Does that sound right? Okay.
You know, I assume our
Getting there, I'm
financing
tired.
rate would be, since we get so little money, for interest, it's always good to, finance on things that we can get back, because that's
Yep.
probably even better than what the airport could get.
I think right now we had forecast to be about 3.5%. Of course, it's performing several basis points higher for the year right now. We don't control the macroeconomic conditions, but right now as interest rates kind of stay somewhat at a higher level than forecast, we're benefiting from it in terms of interest income earnings. So that's to say that we'll have all of these kind of accountings from a policy decision for year-end reallocations, and you can make those decisions at that time as well. But one thing we'll talk about after this in the next board item, which is this project has a bit of timing associated with it, specifically for the engineering.
Yes.
So if your intent is to move in this direction, the next agenda item will at least be able to be addressed with the use of on-hand reserve monies. So because it's not a one-year project, it's a 2-year project, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Now, I would hate to leave that much money on the table for needed,
A lot to say no to.
for needed improvements as well. I mean, you got 10 hangars, you've got
You're basically building out the last quadrant of your hangaring space, and we don't have a lot of hangaring spaces after this, so this is kind of like the last phase, if you will, for build out of the master plan. Otherwise, you're going to need projects that have a significant amount of grading and leveling associated with them. Those aren't going to be $2 million. It's going to be like 5 or 6.
and that construction is just vertical. It's stormwater and everything is in place currently.
Yes.
Correct. So,
And it's not like we don't know the demand is there. The waiting list is already 60 plus people long, so you can fill it pretty much overnight.
yes. And then the fuel farm, it's dated. I'll leave it at that.
These old gas pumps?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Sure. Good.
You need to take a vote?
This is more of just a update, that policy
Yeah.
decision, and that will be through the actual recommended updated motion item. So we would likely in August have to bring back forward the prior approved, if you remember, we did it in November, the East End Hangar Development Project with updated financials. Because if you remember, we approved it based off of, where did I have it? This construct. So we would have to approve it differently under this construct because the financial approval mechanism changed.
Okay.
So we'll come back with that, but that doesn't mean we're going to not make progress towards the engineering stuff here for the next agenda item.
Fair.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I got the guidance that I needed from that one, if there's anything else.
Mhm.
So the next one is the actual East End Hangar Development Engineering Proposal. So if you're unfamiliar with GFT, they are the Township's Airport Department Engineering Service Provider. So what they are projecting is for a net total cost of coverage for the proposal to cover all of the engineering service through the life cycle of the project. It's what they do for all engineering projects associated projects needing engineering support for the airport. The proposal is in the packet. It's pretty extensive. Whitney, the solicitor, just made sure that part of the motion recommendation would be upon solicitor review of the proposal as well. So to tack that on there. But with that, the actual financial mechanism would be different. It's not through the principal balance initially. It would be through on-hand reserve funds we have to activate the project, if that makes sense. So this is pretty standard in terms of a function of a procedure towards getting a project started for engineering. And the funding allotment is coming from the same reserve fund position. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But this is, of course, in support of that 10 hangar build out project.
$26.14.
Well, there's no resolution associated with this one. This is just for the
Oh, okay. For
motion
big
to
bang.
recommend the engineering agreement with GFT Infrastructure.
Yep.
And then what you would need to add to that is pending final review from the township solicitor, just to make sure the contract agreement is completely legally reviewed.
Okay, make a motion to enter into an agreement with GTF Infrastructure for the East End hangar not to exceed $210,579 as pending the solicitor's review.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you, Chris. Next is Resolution 2026-014, fiscal year 2024 auditor.
So for those unfamiliar, we've briefed this in the past, the township FY23 auditor was pretty much a nightmare in terms of their audit services for the township. When we approved that auditor, they did not disclose to us during FY24, because of course you're doing your audit in the next year, that they were being merged with another company that went from BB&D, our former auditor who had done almost a decade's worth of audits, got merged with a company called Witham, Smith and Brown, I believe it. And they are a global nonprofit audit firm that doesn't service local government. And so they basically merged with the company, took its clients with them, and didn't have a audit team in hand to be able to continue some of those municipal relationships, if you will. So with that, we kind of got left out the dark for a while there until they finally told us, number one, that this was happening, because we were like, hey, what's going on? Almost pursuing legal action against it, until they put us with a company called CLA, which does perform local government type audits, and they have an office in King of Prussia, I believe it is. That didn't start until summertime frame. I believe it was July of last year. They did a lot of field work, catching back up. They had to restart the audit because what BB&D started, they had to pull back to the beginning and redo it. It's kind of like an audit kind of preparatory type work. So needless to say, they took the next 8 to 9 months just basically getting all of the kind of bureaucratic work done on their end, because we already had everything ready to submit. And then finally, they were able to deliver the audit about full non-draft version, complete final QAing from their side this about 2 months ago. I believe it was nearly the day that we received that final clean audit. By the way, that's on the website. The auditor that we did appoint to perform the FY24 audit said that they could no longer do our audit. That was with B. Bergvall and Company, a local government Pennsylvania audit firm. So it's like 2 steps forward, like 5 steps back, it felt like. So we need to identify an FY24, and in that same hand, my request to this firm and a couple other firms that we had done some due diligence on of, you don't just need to do the 24, you need to have done that like 2 years ago, you need to do the 25 and then successively the 26. We need to catch back up. So they agreed to that. It is Zelenkovsky Axelrod. They come with a high recommendation from Kennett Square Borough, and they do the county as well. They do a lot of local government municipalities in Pennsylvania. So we do have confidence that they're not going to get merged with another company and we get left in the same position. So that's what you're proving tonight is the FY24 audit work, but then we will have to do the continual org resolutions that we do at the beginning of each year or so to do the 25 and the 26 when they come around as well. So just expect, hopefully in this case, some continuity. The way that they describe it is they'll have the FY24 complete by the end of the year. Financial statements for FY25 complete, hopefully at the same time frame, as well as the FY25 delivered very early next winter in 27, as well as 26 complete. So when the 26 gets delivered, we'll be back on track. And hopefully that'll be by April normal time frame next year. And hopefully the good news is they would have just done the previous 2 with no break. So they won't need to ask a lot of same questions. So the redundancy and efficiency should be clean. So this is kind of like a get right program. And we're going to be very aggressive in getting it done.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2026-14, appointing Zelenkovsky Axelrod LLC for audit services at a cost not to exceed $42,500?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Chris, employee personnel manual update?
Yeah, so the township adopted in 2023 its updated complete renewal of the personnel manual. Part of that, though, didn't include some provisioning in terms of details about how we do the paid time off payout policy, which if you went into the personnel manual and approved it, the leave policy benefits more tenured employees. Obviously, that makes sense. The more time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years of employment, you're going to have more offered paid time off. But we didn't flesh out how much of a percentage you are vested into your payout of your leave based off of that same tenureship. So this was a bit of an exposure to the township. So this would be one where we would give low percentage, which you'll see in the actual agenda item for tonight. And actually, I can make sure to pull it back up here. The lowest per tenured employees would get a smaller percentage potential payout as a benefit, and then it would scale up towards 100% vested based off of a certain time on board with the township. Because we do want to promote that as a retention function for the management of employees. Hey, if you stay here, provide good work to the township, and you're in good standing, we want to basically reward our good employees. So with that, that is one where we're kind of correcting that bit of a loophole, if you will. The other side was the policy had not been ratified, but it had been executed in the past, which is the tuition reimbursement. This is pretty standard, kind of another incentive for retention. Also, we want to make sure that our employees here feel like they're constantly kind of expanding their career skills and providing that value of that career skill back to the community. It's a reinvestment, if you will. So there is language about making sure that what they're investing their time in is relevant to their skills or what they're doing here as a employee of the township. It can be expanded if you want to put certain clauses on how much time they have to have on board with the township, how many years incurred of service they would need to have if they have the benefit. So there are other things that you can do to tighten up that language, but these are the recommendations for now if you have any questions.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2026-15, authorizing the updates to the Employee Personnel Manual as Chris described?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Last agenda item for the manager's report is the energy rate renewal.
So the township in the past has used kind of like a consultant service to find proposed best rates, if you will, so rate shopping. They're kind of servicing their, whatever it is, corporate function through these relations they get from energy providers to kind of get their returns, and in the same time frame the township gets a shopped rate to get the best selected rate. So the last energy renewal policy the township re-upped started in 2021 for a 5-year term. Ours currently expires in November of 26. So we were notified that it was expiring if we're interested in doing the renewal or selecting a different rate. It was kind of like a, what's the harm in that? So with that, we put them to work to try to find it. They found it with, I believe it's Hudson, I think it is. At that proposed rate. It does project savings over what we would slide back into under a PICO rate, should we not do anything and just let the current one expire. So it does present savings to the township over PICO standards, and it did look pretty broad across the probably more relevant providers as well. So this is probably more of a factor that that rate is higher than it was 5 or 6 years ago. I think it's doubled over that time frame, which is another conversation that we control, but all that's to say that this is the best available rate that we could potentially get.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a motion to authorize the 3-year fixed rate agreement from Hudson Energy?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Now the manager's report, Chris. Any commentary there?
I do have, and this is part of an ongoing discussion about prioritization for transportation capital projects. So I just had like another brief kind of walkthrough tonight, not to obviously vote on anything since this is just manager report discussions, but it's just getting us in the mindset that if you want to expand beyond just paving and you want to do real transportation improvement work, we do have some guidelines and some projects completed that have informed us where to start potentially based off of priorities from both the board and the community at large. But I just wanted to kind of walk through that tonight because it's one where if we can start figuring out where to start based off of where on the list, otherwise staff can just work off of what we see and would nominate if it were a staff-led recommendation process, but we wanted to get your inputs before that as well. So we're not just kind of pulling one of the projects randomly off the board and going with that one. So for those unfamiliar, our comprehensive plan, if you think of it, it has a lot of related transportation projects in terms of enhancements to the community, specifically for movement of people, goods, promotes economic and community development, reflects the character of the township. So it's not one where there isn't a desire from the public to refurbish and redo certain intersections and other corridor treatments and other types of transportation types initiatives. I'm not going to regurgitate all of these, but these are also in the comprehensive plan. But essentially, this is something that the community wants as well. So with that, the first thing is well, where do we start? How much do we need to improve upon? And what's the type of analysis that we need to do to get the kind of more granular detail about what that means? So we did Act 209, also recommended by the comprehensive plan to do it. So we did that through the 24 into the summer timeframe. It was about an 18-month process by law to get that done. And so what that does is it gives you a lot of follow-on guidance and documentation about your land use planning, your capacity in terms of movements through intersections specifically, different intersections in your study area, knowing that your study area by law has to be restricted to less than 7 square miles. That's a random Pennsylvania thing. But so we gerrymandered our study map here to be as beneficial to look at state-owned arteries. So we looked at Route 41, Baltimore Pike, and Newark Road as kind of the main arteries for intersections because that's where the most people travel in our community. And then with that, identify as many intersections that are in that area and what needs to happen at those intersections potentially based off of the restrictions of movement. Just to kind of reemphasize that Act 209 is about level of service, not safety. So we're talking about turning intersection that might have long queuing times that result in a grade F and improving those queuing times by getting traffic through there faster, which would get it up to a level service minimum for us, which is a level of D service, which has a certain kind of relationship to amount of time it takes to generally go through there during peak service hours. So with that, some of these projects in the accepted transportation capital improvement plan that we accepted in July are kind of already in the works, either for PennDOT for the intersection at Baltimore Pike and Newark Road, which is set to begin shoveling in 2028. It's going through permitting and design as we speak. Final design and permitting as we speak, as an inverse order. The Route 1 interchange area is part of the corridor improvement projects that PennDOT's doing, as well as the White Clay Point project, which is going to be increasing the level of service, not necessarily just to accept the additive trips, but to improve it to a service level above that as well too. And that takes off about 5 or so intersections off of the list of, I think it's about 25. So you're getting something already kind of done based off of momentum that's already put in place. And there you go, these are those projects and these are the types of ones. So another one was just, we had the total transportation capital improvement plan that identified, there you go, $59 million in total requirements to do all of those build outs. Not necessarily a bar tab that we can pick up. So the good news is these PennDOT projects are taking a significant slice off of that pie from us. It doesn't leave us without having to basically scale funding for it, but we don't have to do the entire lift, which is nice because they're basically doing the largest ones off of the top of the list, or some of the largest ones. So with that, what's left? And this is where we need to kind of take it from the big down to the more granular and detail on the list of projects as well. So these are some of those projects, no, excuse me, these I think are some of the remaining ones because there's multiple intersection improvements listed with one. So you might have one intersection that might need 1 or 2, or I think no more than 2. I don't remember anyone that needed 3. So it might be one intersection, but the project list would have 2 projects associated with it. As you can see with Star Road is one of them. And so this is one where amongst these, it's where do we start? Which one do we want to target? Which is the priority? Priority can be based off of low-hanging fruits, like, hey, we can probably get that done within your revenues here to modify all the timing for the signals in the township. That one seems pretty clean to do. For some of the other ones, it's like, do we prioritize it based off of the feasibility of the funding level required to get it done? Or do we do it off of some of the more, we'll call them perceived areas of highest demand? It just depends. So with that though, if it's perceived area of highest demand, Route 41 and Newark Road, you're going to take some time to be able to scale the funding to get something like that done. It's going to take a while. And the way that we normally do in the past, intersection nominations is through the county TIP program, but that can be a decades-long process to get funding levels met to be able to get those types of funds from the Federal Highway Administration here to New Garden Township to do a local project. Because then you'd have to say this would be competing with all the different similar types of intersections throughout the entire county. And then the county's intersections of all those types go against Montgomery County, go against Bucks County, go against, I think it's like Gloucester County and some of the other New Jersey counties, as well as Philadelphia City County and Delaware County, PA. So you're not just competing with your own backyard, you're competing with all 5 council of governments around the Philadelphia metropolitan area. As well as that pot of funding is 100%, obviously 50% only goes towards 2 or 3 roads to start, which are not in the township. So you can see that it's kind of a numbers game and a prioritization game, and you're competing against a lot of projects in the area. This is a huge MSA. So on top of that, if it's not necessarily specifically to intersections, we have some other projects identified that are more like transportation types of projects, but not intersections such as, you know, can we do some curb safety improvements? Can we do some sight distance improvements around the township? These mostly have come through resident requests as well as some nominations from like public safety or public works to improve safety conditions. Do we have to do more studies to figure out how much more we need to do? I know everyone loves to study. One of them has already been greenlit. London Grove applied for a DVRPC, which is a Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission grant. It's called the TCDI. I forgot what that stands for, but essentially it's like a saldo type of project to basically establish better design standards. Not what it functionally is from an engineering perspective, but you know, you're picking the carpets and the curtains for Route 41 essentially all the way down there. And they got 200 grand for it. And that's a multi-municipal grant project. So we're participating in that along with London Grove, Londonderry, Avondale Borough, and Kennet Township, which owns about 2 seconds worth of Route 41. So that's really what this is you can have essentially you guys figure it out type of posture, or like, hey, I personally begrudgingly hate this one intersection, you need to fix that at all costs. I just need to get inputs to start figuring out a direction to steer this thing. And make no mistake, and I'll clarify this, we have no money to do this, so we'll have to figure that part out as well. But I think getting them identified and prioritized, we can then start exploring programs and come up with like a feasibility for something like that done. So this is, we're talking about the next 5 to 10 years of worth of effort in the township right now. If you have a question, if you want to, I can mirror it, but do you want to come up and make a question?
Say it loud.
For the public record, we record all our meetings, so sorry, yeah.
Just a quick question. Randy Geock, resident. Any update on with the white clay improvements? Are they considering the bridge over Route 7 there as well? That bridge is, I think, 100 years old now, and I know that there's some concerns with the safety of that. And then additionally, I know it's not within our jurisdiction, but is there any update on the bridge through Avondale that has the truck restrictions on it? Thank you.
No, that's great questions. The overpass is not part of those improvements. In terms of the actual throughput on either side, to the TCDI study, it wasn't identified as an area needed for improvement to accept the added generative new trips for the white clay project. So it's more of the interchange areas between the on and off ramps that are subject to improvements, but not the actual structure itself. I believe the term they use in that type of request is an act of God to get PennDOT to fix it. Now the bridge in Avondale is a different one. It's under a weight restriction as we speak. It's kind of similar. PennDOT takes a significant amount of time, but that one is at least getting some additional project attention. Are they moving towards a design and engineering on that one right now, or is it going to be even less than that? I'd have to reach out to Avondale Borough, who's the primary agent, kind of following and tracking that one to be specific.
Only thing I can say is they are getting a lot of input from the public, possibly one that's sitting here speaking right now, as well as members from Avondale Borough. The bridge is in bad shape.
Yep. It doesn't help that it's also in the smack dab in the middle of the worst flood zone, designated floodplain zone in the area as well. So there's a lot of things that restrict its ability to move expeditiously, we'll call it that.
And they have identified a detour route,
Yep.
preliminary, which is not a very easy detour route.
And then for local area trucking traffic, that when you mix with the Baltimore Pike, when you mix the clunky turns on and off of Newark and Route 41, it's not ideal right now to be, and the interchange off of Route 1 on the Newark Road, it's we're not exactly ideal to accept the normal truck work traffic that we have based off of the businesses that we have here in the community as well. So hopefully these improvements will expand that capacity and that relief comes at some point. And we've reached out to and talked with some of the more kind of significant truck vendors like the Manfredis and stuff in the past, and they at least are aware. So go back to the list. And you don't have to provide an answer. You can review this, provide feedback. You have I can provide this as an Excel or whatever it is if you just want to take a look at it and stuff. But This is just to start a dialogue, and what the goal is essentially to get this feedback to our traffic engineer, Bowman, to be coming up with like essentially like a game plan, a strategy for this. Because most people, most townships approach these as kind of like an ad hoc approach. The one that gets the most amount of sensationalism around them is the one that gets highlighted, but they never look at it kind of holistically. We are now understanding more of like our complete build out requirements, and it's just, you know, which ones are more of a priority than others. Any questions?
No, there are ones on there that will be impacted by White Clay Point, and some significant improvements will be led by that highway occupancy permit. As we get further into the approval of that plan, we'll know better, and maybe we go for some of the other low-hanging fruit.
Well, the other one was, and this is by intent, a lot of these are located within, and
Correct.
the other part, a lot of these are located within where we were trying to push some of the incentivization to build alongside township-owned roadways.
Mhm.
So some of these could be developer-built as well,
Yeah.
and that's not lost on it. So for those that have frontages towards certain kind of parcels that might be more prone to be going kinetic as a potential land development, maybe that might be a way to kind of pull some of these projects, because we would want them to fund it as part of their land development. Because that was the reason we got the traffic impact fee ordinance fee established in the first place. So that's another potential value add there as well.
It's not on on the list there, but the intersection at Penn Green and Route 41, I know that they did a traffic study, and the left-hand turn from Penn Green onto 41 wasn't justified due to the traffic, but it does get backed up and is a problem because people will be trying to beat the light heading south on Penn Green, and will T-bone people into trying to turn left. So just something to think about for the future is that becomes more congested.
Yeah, let me go back and recheck that one. I remember that one,
Yeah.
as well as the Scarlet ones now that I'm thinking about it. So, yeah, if anything, the list is longer and more expensive. So there you go.
Correct. Very good.
Okay, so we'll work on that feedback process there, and kind of maybe start, if you want to have staff kind of chunk into this and come up with like a strategy. If there's no other inputs, we'll be fine in doing that. Okay, that's all I have for this. The last one we can just kind of mention, which is the Chester County Hazard Mitigation Plan. So every 5 years, the county does this kind of full-scale reassessment, if you will, of every single hazard potentially throughout the entire county. It's been completed. It was roughly about a 2-year consulting process. I think Michael Baker actually was the consulting agent on that one as well. But all that's to say, if you're not familiar with the County Hazard Mitigation Plan, it's essentially a risk assessment for every single functional possible threat that you can think of to your locality. It could be obviously flooding. It could be larger scale facilities for like commercial building fires. It can be anything that is related towards a potential emergency response type of thing. And what your exposure to that is based off of an indexing prioritization of who is more or less exposed to more risks than others, because you would take that and then you would take that information locally and establish kind of a more locally ordained emergency operations plan with your local first responders. So it's great information. You kind of figure out what your picture is as a locality. Ours is primarily flooding is the #1 risk exposure that we have. A lot of areas along the watersheds obviously share that same priority. If you have like a railroad crossing, we do, but it's like East Penn versus like a Norfolk Southern. Like the Norfolk Southern would be a more higher risk area, if you will. So it is a delightful document of 730 pages. So feel free to take it home for some light reading tonight.
Good.
The link is on the Chester County Emergency Management Department of Emergency Services website. I can provide the link, but essentially we have to adopt that plan. So I was going to assume when they released it that no one went rushing in to read that entire thing from top to bottom, but I would hope that before maybe the next meeting, I think we have to adopt it by the fall. September is coming to mind. I think But I just want to make sure there's time to at least, gut through it and if you have any questions, let me know. But
Thank you, Chris. Any comment from the board on any other topics? I did have one, actually. Chris, I wanted to thank Kenny and his team. They came into our neighborhood after that storm on the 4th of July. They came in the middle of the night, cut up a tree that fell on our street. We have one road in, one road out, like it was blocking the road. It was a problem, and they came in, I think it was 1:30 in the morning, cut it up.
yep.
Came back a couple days later and finished cutting it up, but a great effort by Kenny and his team.
No, that's great. And we had two kind of rushed storm efforts, recovery responses over the last few weeks. One was July 4th, one was on Saturday night of last weekend as well, too. So usually forgotten in terms of like a response mechanism, but Public Works is a piece of that. So we've always regarded them as a function of our overall public safety funding because they do provide response services as well in not so great conditions.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn? David doesn't want to. Okay, all in favor?
Waiting for the clock. Aye.
Okay, you want me to stall?
Yeah, like
Okay.
30 seconds. There we go. Here it goes. I heard it click. Did it die? What'd you do to it, Steve? It loses about 5 minutes